Happy Halloween everyone, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale Darkness video, where today I'm going to be using Deoxys to beat the game. And Deoxys is a very unsettling Pokemon, being an alien virus that lands on the planet, and it's able to shapeshift into multiple forms, though in this game I couldn't actually find a way to do that. And lore-wise it's just a bit of an enigma because there's no real explanation for it, it just kind of appears. So I think it's perfect for our Halloween special, so let's go and get right into it. Deoxys has 50 HP, 150 attack, 50 defense, 150 special attack, 50 special defense, and 150 speed. So it's a very strong attacker on both the physical and special side, and with that 150 base speed, it's not going to be outsped by anything in the game. Unfortunately, it is playing a bit of a dangerous game, having very little defenses and HP, so it might get taken down in just 2 or 3 attacks. So with this being a very hyper-offensive Pokemon, it luckily does have a very good move pool, getting access to moves like Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, Psychic, and even Water Pulse and Brick Break if I want to go out of my way for those. However, there is one glaring issue, and that is despite its huge offensive stats, it only starts with Nightshade to deal damage. Well, I guess it also has Wrap, but there's no reason to ever use Wrap. And it won't get another move until level 15 with Knockoff, and it's only 20 base power. But I hope that after a very slow beginning, it's going to take off like a rocket and beat the rest of the game very quickly. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to our Deoxys in particular, which has a quirky nature, which is a neutral nature, though I think this is probably for the best because I really don't want to lower any of my defenses any further, and I really don't need any raises to my attacking stats. It gets the pressure ability, raising PP usage for the opponent from 1 to 2, and it gets Leer, Wrap, Nightshade, and Teleport by level 10. So with that, the first thing we need to do right away is teach Seismic Toss. Now, in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have taught it over Nightshade because I can't hit Ghost types right now. However, it doesn't end up mattering because of a certain hurdle that we'll get to in just a moment. Anyway, I go into the battle against the old man, and even though my defenses are pretty bad, 50 is still fairly decent for this part in the game, so really I'm not in too much danger here, even though I'm not dealing an insane amount of damage yet. And after just a few Seismic Tosses, I'm able to defeat the old man, and we go ahead and move on to the green Power Ranger. And the reason I'm going for the green one is because all of his Pokemon are a lower level, and hopefully I'll be able to take them all down in just 1 or 2 Seismic Tosses. Anyway, let's go ahead and start just a little bit of rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Anyway, whenever I get a suggestion for a Pokemon, I don't actually look into the stats and move pool of it until right before I start the run. And when I was looking over Deoxys, I realized that it has a lot of parallels to both Alakazam and Gardevoir. With Alakazam's stats, though it does have a much higher attack stat and no extra special defense. And it's kind of a mishmash between Gardevoir and Alakazam's movesets, having moves like Recover, but also starting out with only Nightshade, though it luckily does get Seismic Toss. Oh, and talking about moves, at level 15, Deoxys gets Knockoff, which I think is going to be a bit stronger, but honestly, I go for Knockoff on this Pineco, and it does about half of its health, which is honestly less than I expected with its huge special attack stat. And then I go for another one and it doesn't even take it down. Unfortunately, it was a range and Deoxys goes down. Though with Knockoff now in hand, let me go ahead and try to fight Brown because he has the Baltoy that's part Psychic type and it's only doing about a third. And in response, both of them together are nearly taking me down to half. So unfortunately, I don't think this battle is doable either. And so I think it's time to do a little bit of training and maybe get up to level 20, that way I can at least have Pursuit. But I go to Mount Battle, the best area to get levels at this point, and I decide to start from the beginning, because I do think that level 2 might just be a little too strong for Deoxys at this point, which is a weird thing to say, but finally at level 20 I get the move Pursuit, and I'm going to teach that right over Knockoff. And because I was more than halfway through Area 2, I went ahead and finished that off and picked up the move Water Pulse. Now, with Water Pulse in hand, I decided to go over and fight the red Power Ranger instead. Now, the reason I've slowed down this fight to what would be normally 1x speed is because I want to take a look at Deoxys' animations, and specifically this one. I really like the curl around and the kind of jolt that it does. it's a very nice animation. And then there's the other one, which is Pursuit, where as it kind of whips its tentacles, it brings out hands, which kind of shows off the fact that it can shapeshift. I don't know, I think it's just very well done. Anyway, with Red defeated, we can finally move into the Cypher base, where I wasn't planning on catching this Carvana, but it got taken down to such little HP, I may as well do it for the extra dark type damage. And at level 25, I get the move Psychic, which I teach over Leer. And then I go into the battle against Silverina. She leads with a Beautifly and a Love Disc, and I go for Psychic into the Beautifly to take it down and run away because it does have the move Thief, which would do super effective damage. I go for Psychic to take down the Roselia, and then out comes her final Pokemon, the Shadow Delcatty. And honestly, I think Psychic should be more than enough to take it down in a single hit, which it does, and then all that's left is the poor Love Disc, which of course falls the same way. So with Loverino defeated, we of course can't have a Halloween special without the obligatory Mira B. How you doing today, Mira B? Well, it looks like he's already dressed up, so let's go ahead and move on to catching the Shadow Ralts for the Twisted Spoon item to raise my Psychic type damage by 10%. Though I'm not sure if Deoxys really needs it, I go down to the Real Gam Tower to come pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect. And while I never teach Hidden Power, it ends up being Hidden Power Grass, which I wouldn't have probably used anyway. I teach Ice Beam over Seismic Toss, and then I go into the battle against Snaddle. He leads with the Lantern and Quagsire, and I go for Psychic to take down the Lantern. And the reason I'm taking down the Lantern side is because Quagsire is just going to go for Rock Tomb, lowering my speed. But since my speed is already so high, I don't think it's really going to matter. Lunatone unfortunately does survive a Water Pulse, so it is able to set up Shadow Sky, but on the following turn I take it down. Then out comes the Cast Form, which definitely isn't a threat whatsoever, so I take it down with Psychic on this turn because I think that the Quagsire is just going to continue using Rock Tombs, but it surprises me by switching over to Ice Punch, which really doesn't matter too much other than the fact that it has that chance to freeze. Now moving on to the third attempt against Snaddle, and unfortunately this is one of those battles where Quagsire needs to miss a Rock Tomb. Deoxys has no problem taking down everything in a single hit other than his Metang, but unfortunately over the course of a whole battle its health is slowly whittled down to the point where when it doesn't get that one hit KO on Metang, it's able to finish it off with its little bit of HP remaining. But actually on this attempt, Quagsire misses 2 Rock Tombs, leaving me at half health, and the Metang even gets confused, hitting itself in confusion, so I actually get through this battle very easily. But with Snaddle defeated, now at level 40, Deoxys gets Recover, which I decide to teach over Pursuit, and then at level 45, Deoxys gets Psycho Boost, a 140 base power, 90% accurate psychic move that lowers my special attack by 2 stages. So while I'm not actually going to use this move, I really just wanted to see the animation for it. But anyway, after that, I go ahead and teach Psychic back once again, and then I go into the battle against Gonzap. He leads with an Electrode and a Nuzleaf, and I decide right away to take down the Electrode. He then sends out Vileplume, and Nuzleaf gets a crit on Feint Attack, taking me down to 32 HP in a single attack. I go for Ice Beam to take it down because it's definitely a huge threat. And Vileplume luckily misses a Hyper Beam. I go for Recover, getting back up to 87. Hyper Beam from Whiscash and a Hyper Beam from Vileplume takes me down to 20 HP. Go for another Recover while they're both recharging. And then I go for a Psychic to take down the Vileplume, sending out his final Pokemon, a Skarmory. Whiscash actually misses another Hyper Beam, so I'm able to take it down. And all that's left is Skarmory, which its Hyper Beams really aren't doing all that much damage, but I decide to recover anyway, just in case I didn't take it down in a single hit. Now with Deoxys wasting no time at all, we get over to Gorgon very quickly, and I go for Psychic into the Celio to take it down in a single hit. Then out comes Slowking. Now I don't actually have anything to instantly take it down, so I go for Psychic, and it actually survives at half health. It goes for Earthquake, getting a crit, taking me down nearly to half. I go for Protect, and unfortunately this is a battle where Deoxys definitely needs to keep its HP as high as it can, so every other turn is going to be a Protect. And even though that does lose it a bit of time, I do think it's better to be a little safer here rather than losing and having to climb the tower to take on Gorgon again. So I take down his Ursaring, definitely one of his bigger threats. And the Lairon is still doing quite a bit of damage with Iron Tail, though it is only 70% accurate. Go for a Psychic to take down the Primeape, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Hypno. And I really doubt that that's going to go down to a single Psychic, so I decide to take down the Lairon first. That way I'm not taking extra damage throughout the last couple turns. Shadow Storm hits, doing quite a bit of damage to me, but as long as it doesn't get a crit, I think I'm fine. I go for Ice Beam, which takes it down to low yellow, and it doesn't get a critical hit, so I'm able to finish it off and beat Gorgon on the first attempt. So now moving on to the last area of the game, and Deoxys has been doing very well. However, the last area is always very difficult, so hopefully it'll be able to get by it just fine. Anyway, the first battle we have to do is a rematch against Lavrina. She leads with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis, and I'm able to take down the Gorbis in a single hit. And unfortunately, turn 1, I get frozen, and I never end up thawing out. So definitely not a great way to start out Dark Isle, but to make sure that doesn't happen again, I decide to teach Shadow Ball over Protect, and then I go back in again. And this time I take down Gardevoir right away. Now, in hindsight, I think that Gorbis was still the better Pokemon to take down first because its Ice Beams are going to do more damage than Gardevoir's Ice Punches, but it doesn't really end up mattering. Roselia sets up Leech Seed, though I can kind of just ignore it for now, go for Ice Beam to take down the Farfetch'd, and then she sends out her final Pokemon, a Shadow Altaria. And luckily Roselia's magical leaves aren't really doing that much damage, so I can take down the Altaria without having to worry about Roselia taking me down. Now had it gotten a crit, it probably could have, but it doesn't, and I finish it off. So with that we scale the mountain, and we get to the battle against Snaddle. He leads with a Quagsire and a Matang. Go for Shadow Ball into Matang, and unfortunately it's not quite a one-shot. So I decide to switch targets and take down the Quagsire instead, which it goes down in a single Psychic, and then out comes Scizor. And Scizor does have Silver Wind, so I do want to get rid of it as soon as possible, and a crit Psychic will definitely do the job. Then out comes Solrock, and because I have Shadow Ball, I should be able to take it down in a single hit as well, which it does. And then out comes Castform, which of course goes down to a single Psychic, no doubt about it. And then he sends out his final Pokemon, a Shadow Starmie, but it is going to go down just like all the rest. I go for Shadow Ball to take it down in a single hit, and then all that's left is the Matang, which, it already being that low, means that anything can take it down. So I beat Snaddle on the first attempt. So I then go into the battle against Ardos, and he leads with a Shadow Swallow and Alakazam, and I decide on this attempt to get rid of the Swallow first, which unfortunately means that I'm going to be taking constant Ice Punches from the Alakazam, which of course always have that 10% chance to freeze. However, it's not really doing that much damage, and at this point I decide to check my moves and realize that I still don't have Protect, and I really don't want to recover in front of the Heracross just in case it decides to go for Mega Horn. And this is when I realize that there's not really a good opportunity in this fight to use Recover, because all of his Pokemon do a ton of damage to me. But anyway, with his Shadow Electabuzz down, he sends out his final Pokemon, a Shadow Snorlax, and unfortunately it really does just come down to luck at this point, if it hits or not, and unfortunately on this attempt it does. Well, let's go ahead and go back in for a second attempt. This time I'm going to change up the strategy and take down Alakazam first, which means that Swallow is going to set up Shadow Sky on the first turn, effectively not dealing any damage to me, and it has the chance of either using Shadow Half or Shadow Break. However, in this attempt I decide to get rid of it now, though in a future attempt it does only go for Shadow Break, which is very unfortunate, and Kingdra gets a critical hit on Hydro Pump, though it is good to know that it can nearly two-shot me with it. Hydro Pump does have a small chance to miss, so there is a chance it could miss right now, but Kingdra actually swaps over to Dragon Breath to finish me off. So I decide to go ahead and teach Protect over Recover. Even though Recover is incredibly strong, Deoxys just doesn't take hits very well, so I think a Protect strategy is definitely better. And now on the 5th attempt, I decide to go back to my original strategy, taking that Swallow right away. Now, of course, swapping back over to Protect means that I'm going to be protecting every other turn. That way I can stay as healthy as I can, and more likely actually make it to Snorlax. Now, something interesting I had happen while I was doing these attempts is that usually whenever you pair up Electabuzz and Snorlax, the Electabuzz is going for Shadow Mist to lower my evasiveness. That way the Shadow Snorlax can hit his Shadow Ends more often. However, for whatever reason, it doesn't decide to do that, instead going for Shadow Storm, which means that Electabuzz is completely off the table as a Pokemon to pair up with Snorlax, and I even tried Kingdra, but that didn't work either, which really just leaves Alakazam. And so I go for Psychic, and luckily the Snorlax misses Shadow End this time, and so I'm able to finish it off, and then all that's left is the Alakazam, who can't survive a Shadow Ball. So this battle doesn't end up being all that hard, I just had to find the correct route to get through it. So with Ardos now defeated, we move on to Gorgon, who leads with a Ursaring and Slowking, and I go for Shadow Ball into the Slowking right away, taking it down in a single hit. And then out comes Aggron, and I go for Psychic into the Aggron to take it down right away as well. And then out comes the Walrein. Now Ursaring is going for Slash, doing quite a bit of damage, and it also has a higher crit chance, which is definitely not great. However, I need to get rid of the Walrein first because it protects on that turn, and I decided to get rid of Poliwrath as well, which makes sense if you saw the Alakazam and Gardevoir video, because as it turns out, things can go out of hand very quickly if it's still around and sets up Shadow Sky. I go for Psychic to take down the Ursaring, and then all that's left is the Mr. Mime. And something that I constantly forget is that Deoxys' special defense is also just as low as its defense. So I thought that Shadow Storm wasn't going to do as much damage as it did. I then teach Thunderbolt over Shadow Ball, and then I go into the battle against Eldest. He leads with a Ninjask and a Manectric, and I take down the Manectric right away. Now Ninjask is going to be going for Silver Wind, which is doing about a third of my total HP. So I go for Protect to not get hit by those, and hopefully stall them out until there's none left. I know I can take down the Salamence in a single hit. And then out comes the Flygon. I go for another Protect while it uses another Protect. Okay. Well, it should be going for Silver Wind this turn, right? No, it's going for Aerial Ace. So I took it down for no reason, and now I get finished off by Flygon. Okay, well that was a bit strange, but with that knowledge now in mind, let's go back in again, get back to that point, and I go for the Ice Beam to finish off Salamence just as before. And we're basically in the same position as before, and I decide to just go ahead and attack Flygon, and Ninjask swaps over to Protect. And honestly, I couldn't be happier, because now I don't really need to worry about anything on the rest of his team, because I can just protect every other turn that Ninjask attacks, and I can one-shot everything else, other than maybe the Shadow Lapras. I'm not quite sure. Lapras is quite tanky, but also Deoxys is incredibly powerful and takes it down anyway. So all that's left is the Ninjask, and because I can't do anything, I go for Protect, and for some reason it fails. Okay, what is going on with this battle? Anyway, Eldest is defeated. We now move on to the big box legendary, Shadow Lugia. And Lugia really shouldn't be an issue. I go for Ice Beam, taking it down to yellow, and it hits a Shadow Storm, dealing over half my health. I go for Protect just to heal up nearly to half, and then I finish it off with a second Ice Beam before going into the battle against Greevil. Now, of course, being at half HP, this is more or less just a test to see how much damage I do to everything. Moltres goes down in a single Thunderbolt, then out comes the Shadow Executor. Rhydon misses a Shadow End, which is very nice, so I'm able to continue testing how much damage I'm doing to things, and ideally I'd like to get to the Articuno, that way I can see if I'm able to take it down in a single hit. He sends out Tauros, and Rhydon actually misses a second Shadow End, and at this point I need to take down Rhydon because it actually threatens dealing damage, whereas Tauros is just going to set up Shadow Sky on the first turn. And now with Shadow Sky going, I am going to have to protect every other turn just to stall it out, maybe giving me an opportunity to take down the Tauros while it sets it up again. Anyway, I go for Thunderbolt into Articuno, and it takes it down in a single hit as well. Okay, well, I know for a fact now I can take down Zapdos in a single hit, because Articuno is the most specially bulky of all of them, and that just leaves the Tauros, which, while Tauros does have a very good attack stat, it's not nearly as strong as Zapdos is, so its Shadow Rush only takes me down to yellow, and I'm able to outspeed and take it down in a single hit. That went way smoother than I thought it was going to. And I think that really just came down to Rhydon missing a couple times, though it using a 60% accurate move. It was bound to happen after a few attempts, but I'm really glad it happened on the first attempt. So with that, how well did Deoxys actually do? Well, it beat the game at a time of 8 hours, 25 minutes, and 4 seconds at level 68, and it fainted 18 times throughout the game, 9 of those to bosses, and 9 of those to random trainers. So I cannot deny just how strong Deoxys is. It just tears through the entire game. The only real slow point was the very beginning, where it didn't have any moves that made use of its high special attack or attack stats. And that's very unfortunate to hear, because honestly, it didn't struggle anywhere else in the game. It really was just the very beginning. Now fortunately it did have Seismic Toss, so it didn't have to rely on Wrap to deal with the normal types, and Even though I do like the move Seismic Toss and in turn Nightshade, because it's in the slow level up group, it means that it's going to take a lot more experience to actually make it usable, and unfortunately that led to a lot of time loss in the very beginning until it effectively got to level 20, because Pursuit is at least an okay move, Knockoff is terrible. Though I am very glad that I went ahead and did Mount Battle Area 2 to get Water Pulse, because I think that definitely sped up the early game quite a bit. But after that, it completely flies through the game with no real issue other than the occasional trainer here and there that catches you off guard. Anyway, with that being said, it does find itself in the S tier, and with that, if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, happy Halloween, and goodbye!